Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 2.5 of the I Used to Think podcast. This episode is a continuation of episode 2, which is an interview with my friend Miranda. I think about, too, how quickly this happened from when you were, like we were saying, 4th, 5th grade, and now you're 27.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a pretty short period of time, and there are people who struggle with this their entire lives, like decades and decades, and they don't at the very least come to a place of like, okay, I believe God loves me. Like, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, big time. And I almost feel like the Lord put me on a fast track. Like, I think I was wrestling with those questions a lot earlier than a lot of people do. I mean, 4th grade, that's pretty young. Those are some pretty existential questions for a 4th grader to be asking. But I think he prepared me for some things that I was going to have to face before I graduated high school that I would not have. I don't know that I can't guarantee this, but as close to guaranteeing as I could, I don't think I would have been alive through those things if the Lord hadn't done that work in me when he did. Because I met him in 8th grade and got about 4 years to get to know that he was different. And my last year of high school, my parents split. And I remember, it was a month before I graduated, I remember sitting at our dining room table and my dad telling me that my mom wasn't going to be welcome back in our house. And wow. I remember tears falling from my eyes because I was scared. But I distinctly heard the Lord say, "This is where you get to see me be here for you." And I remember so much joy in that moment because I was so scared. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew that I was going to get the chance to see him be there for me and to see what it means to walk with him through suffering. And I don't think if I had gone through all the stuff, like all those questions and all the wrestling and not knowing who he was, if I hadn't gone through that when I did, I would not have been prepared for that to happen. And I wouldn't have been able to walk with him through that pain. Every time I go through something that seems really, really tough, I look back to that moment and remember, like, he's been there. He's always been there. There's a song by Phil Wickham, who's my favorite artist of all time. And it's called, this is terrible, I'm gonna forget the title. It's Always Been You. And I can barely say the lyrics without crying because it's so true, but he says, "You're the voice that calms the storm inside me, castle walls that stand around me. All this time, it's always been you." So I'm really grateful that I went through all of that back then so that I could know that he's different than I thought.
I'm assuming that you've spoken to other people whose parents have gone to divorce, even during the same age that you did.
Yeah, still am.
Right. And what is the typical reaction that you've seen people had? And whether they're Christian or not Christian, but especially if they believe in God.
Do you mean like during the moment where they find out that their parents are splitting, or?
Yeah, and kind of how they cope with it afterwards.
In the moment, I think to everyone it feels like a piece of you is being ripped out. And as a kid, and by that I mean as a child, no matter how old you are, it still feels like this. You're the kid whose parents are splitting, and that is part of you that's being ripped out of you. Mm-hmm. And you can't control that. And it feels like your identity is just being shot into the air and exploded. It just rips your heart into shreds, and there's nothing you can do. And it comes up in a lot of ways too, because every time you go to a restaurant, somebody asks you how many people in your party, and you're like, well, it used to be 6.
Wow, I never thought about that.
It's 5 now. Or, what's your name? Well, I used to know it. Like, what is my name? I don't know. Which parent do you mean? Where do you live? I'm in a suitcase. You know, like, it's this identity that just rips out of you. So most of the people I've talked to have felt like that too, where no matter how old you are, you could be in your 40s and you still feel like this. It's something that has been stable for you for so long, and then it's ripped. It's torn, and it's not gonna get back, you know? Even if your parents get back together, now that's peachy, it's still torn. It's irreparable. However, there can still be beauty made out of those stitches.
I've never thought about that. Going to a restaurant, asking for a number in the party.
You never know how many times it comes up.
Did your parents say, like, did anyone tell you, like, this is who you are now? Or it's just a process of, like, this is my last name. This is the answer that I give when people ask me where I live.
Yeah,
like,
you
you
become
just
numb.
kind of, you know the answers that you're going to give.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because people can't handle the real answers.
That's sadly kind of true, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
They just be like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, let's just seat you and give you some food.
Right? Like, do you want to sit here or there?
Yeah.
Do you want chips with that? What are your words of comfort to someone who whose parents are going through a divorce right now?
I think the first thing I would say is, it's not your fault. That's the first thing every kid asks. Was it me? It's not your fault. It couldn't be.
Yeah.
Your parents are human. It's not your fault. And then the second thing is, as tough as this is going to be, this is your chance to see the Lord be there for you too. And he's going to be there for you exactly in the ways that you need him. And you're going to get to walk this out. And you're going to get to see the story he writes. And in the end, when you look back on it, you're going to say it was beautiful. And you're going to get to know a pain that only some people get to know. And you're going to get to go be with those people afterwards.
It is a very unique pain. And like you were saying, I mean, it really doesn't go away. That's what I'm hearing. No matter how old you are.
No. But it's a scar.
Right.
But you can also point to that, just like Jesus would point to his scars and say, that's how I relate with you.
Right.
I'm human, and there's beauty in this.
I've never really heard the perspective. I've known friends who's gone through divorce, but it's one of those things, like you're saying, where I feel like, so-and-so's parents are split. Mm-hmm. But then you never really ask them.
No, and you wouldn't know to ask.
Anything more than that. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't... You read books about it. It seems like when I was little, I thought it was the cool thing, for a kid to be like, oh, well, this weekend I'm at my mom's house. And you realize when you go through it, it is not cool. It is so disorienting to have to live out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
And parents don't realize it either. They don't realize.
I mean, they're dealing
with their own stuff, and they don't realize their kid's heart just got ripped out of their chest.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it hurts a lot. But I don't regret it. I mean, as much as I would, it's a cool testimony when parents can stay together. But, and they would be great if my parents could have done that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it threw me on the ground. It threw me right at the feet of Jesus, and that's where I needed to be.
I aspire to have half the perspective that you do.
I can only say thank you to God